Hello and welcome to Math with Mrs. Becker. This is College Algebra, Math 1114, and today we will be looking at Chapter 1, Section 1, and the title of that section is Lines in the Plane. And so things that we will do today, we will find the slopes of lines, we will write linear equations if we are given points that are on lines and their slopes. We will use what's called slope-intercept form of a linear equation to be able to sketch lines on a coordinate plane. We will use slope to identify parallel and perpendicular lines. So it looks like a very fun lesson for the day. Let's get started. In this section, you will study lines and their equations. The slope of a non-vertical line represents the number of units the line rises or falls vertically for each unit of horizontal change from left to right. And right there, that already brings us to a really important concept. When you're thinking about your line vertically, it can rise or it can fall. So if you have a positive slope, think of your line as rising or going upwards. If you have a slope that is negative, think of your line as falling or dropping. But when we move horizontal, you can only go from left to right. So it's just like you're reading a book. You only move forwards. You're only traveling horizontal units to the right. Okay? Let's consider 2 points. So x sub 1 and y sub 1, and x sub 2 and y sub 2. Let's say that these 2 points are on the line that we are looking at. And they have a little figure below for us, just for you visual learners to make sure that you can see. So again, x sub 1, y sub 1 is 1 point on the line. X sub 2, y sub 2 is another point on the line. As you move from the left to the right along this line, and that's what I was just talking about, you always want to read graphs going left to right, there is a change of y sub 2 minus y sub 1. It tells you the vertical change that you have from those 2 points. And it corresponds to the change of x sub 2 minus x sub 1, which is the horizontal direction. And this idea is how they got the definition of a slope. Remember way back in probably 7th or 8th grade when you started talking about algebra, they talked about the slope of a line, which in math they use the variable m, and the formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So that's what they're doing here. They're saying to get from one point to the other, what is the change in vertical height? Is it going to rise or fall? Over how much does it change in a horizontal perspective? How many units are you going to the right? So this is our formula for the slope, okay? The change in y over the change in x, where the x's cannot have the same value. If they had the same value, you would end up with a 0 on the bottom. And remember in math, you can never divide by 0. Okay, so this does not work for vertical lines, because for a vertical line, your x values would be the same. Okay, let's go ahead and use this formula to make sure that we can figure out the slope if we know 2 points on a line. So here is my first ordered pair, so we'll call this x sub 1, y sub 1. Here's my second ordered pair, x sub 2, y sub 2. So using the formula m, which represents the slope, which we also call rise over run, to find that you take the second y, 1, minus the first y, 0, over the second x, 3, minus the first x, negative 2. So right away I see another concept that we need to make sure we remember. In math, you cannot minus a negative. If you are subtracting a negative value, what that actually means is you are adding the 2 values. Minus a negative is replaced with a plus. Now let's go ahead and do our calculations. 1 minus 0 is 1. 3 plus 2 is 5. So your slope is 1 over 5. What that means is to get from this point to this point, or from any one point on the line to another point, you go up 1 unit to the right 5. Up 1 unit to the right 5. Let's look at a couple more. Here's our first point, so x sub 1, y sub 1. Our second point, x sub 2, y sub 2. M equals the second y2 minus the first y2 over the second x2 minus the first x, negative 1. So again, on the bottom, we are once again minusing a negative. So 2 minus 2 over 2 plus 1. 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 plus 1 is 3. 0 divided by anything is 0. So what happens here, this would be a horizontal line. Because notice, with a number on the bottom, you are moving in a horizontal direction, but the 0 on the top indicates your line is not rising, it's not falling. It's staying at the same level. So this would be a horizontal line. One more. X sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. To find the slope, the second y, negative 1, minus the first y, 4, over the second x, 1, minus the first x, 0. Negative 1 minus 4 more is negative 5. 1 minus 0 is 1. Now you can leave it like this, or you can recall that anytime you divide by a 1, you do get the whole number, whatever's on the top. So in this case, negative 5 divided by 1 is negative 5. But if I'm thinking of slope, because this is negative, this means to get from one point to the other on your line, you travel down 5 to the right 1, down 5 to the right 1. So here are just some little helpful hints. One thing I wanted you to notice here is that it is okay for your slope to be positive, like our result from example A. It's okay for our slope to be 0, like we saw in example B, and it is okay for our slope to be negative, like we saw in example C. So it's okay, positive, 0, or negative. If you have a line that has a positive slope, meaning your m value is greater than 0, think of the line as rising from left to right. It's going to be a line that is going up to the right, up to the right. If you have a line with a negative slope, think of it as falling because it has to go down to the right, down to the right. If you have a line that has a slope that is 0, like we saw in example B, that is a horizontal line because it can run from left to right. It's just not going up or down. Now, if you have a line that has an undefined slope, undefined means that you would end up with a 0 on the bottom. That is going to be a vertical line because if you have a number on the top, it means it's rising up or falling down, but it's not traveling horizontal distance at all. So a vertical line would have a slope that is undefined because you cannot divide by 0. Moving on, there is an equation called the point-slope form of the equation of a line. As you know the slope of the line and you also know the coordinates of one point on the line, you can find an equation. And here's what it is. It's the variable y minus the y value that you know. That y sub 1 comes from an ordered pair. M is the slope. Then you open parentheses. It's the variable x, meaning you will have x in your equation, minus the x sub 1. The x sub 1 is the numerical value for the ordered pair that is on the line. This equation right here is called point-slope form because you know an xy from a point and you know your slope. Kind of cool. If any of you are visual learners like me, you will notice that I do always put in a visual for you so you can see what this actually looks like. It says find the equation of the line that goes through the point -2, 6, and it has a slope of 3. So I know a point, I know a slope. So it's y minus the y from the ordered pair, 6, equals m. M is the slope. Open a parenthesis, x minus the x from the ordered pair, which is a -2. Now this is good We filled in our x and our y from the ordered pair. We plugged the slope in where it belongs, but we do have a problem because remember you cannot minus a negative. So we would want to simplify this by changing that to addition. Y minus 6 equals 3 inside of parentheses x plus 2. And again, this is the solution we should have gotten. We did, awesome. And this is what that graph would look like. And the cool thing is, we can see on the line that it does contain the point negative 2, 6. If you go to the left 2 up 6, it touches the line. The slope is 3. 3 is a positive number, so you can see as you travel left to right, it is traveling upwards. Because in order to get from one point to the next, you would go up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1. So just a cool visual so you can see exactly what we're doing. Now we're going to try another one. This time, we want to find the equation of a line if we know that it passes through the point positive 1, negative 2, and again, we have a slope of 3. So it's y minus the y from the ordered pair, negative 2, equals m. M is the slope. In parentheses, x minus the x from the ordered pair, that's a 1. So there's my point slope form. Again, there is something that we need to address. You cannot minus a negative. So I need to go y plus 2 equals 3 outside of x minus 1. There is the equation in what is called point slope form. If you look at the graph, if you go to the right 1 and down 2, you can see that yes, that point is there. As you go left to right, the line is rising because we have a positive slope. Now here is a real life example. This is kind of fun, you guys. So applications for linear models. During the year 2004, Nike's net sales were $12.25 billion. Then again in 2005, their sales were actually up to $13.74 billion. They want us to write a linear equation involving the net sales Y. So when we do this, the sales have to be Y in terms of the year X. So what that is doing is it's helping us to take the information that was provided and write them as ordered pairs. They want the year to be X and the sales to be Y. Then use the equation, so we're going to create an equation to predict the net sales for 2006. Let X equals 0 represent the year 2000. So that tells us that X, if you put in a 0, it's 2000. So if X equals 1, that's 2001. If X equals 2, that would be 2002. So if I'm looking at my data, our first year is 2004, so the X value would be a 4. The sales are 12.25. Now, yes, I could write out all those zeros because it's billions, but it's going to be a lot easier if I just remember at the end that I need to label my prediction in billions, okay? So there's one ordered pair. My other ordered pair, 2005, the X value would be 5. The sales, the Y value is 13.74. Now here, they are just having us write an equation. Now in math, when they want you to write an equation, if they do not say point slope form, you are to assume that they want you to go into what's called slope intercept form, which is Y equals mx plus b. So that's what we are going to do here. Step 1, if you are looking for the equation of a line and you know two ordered pairs, your first step always is going to be to identify the slope. So m equals the second y, 13.74, minus the first y, 12.25, over the second x, 5, minus the first x, which is 4. So when I'm doing my calculations, 13.74 minus 12.25, we have 1.49 over 5 minus 4. That is a 1. If you ever divide by 1, we can make this a little bit easier by just saying 1.49 divided by 1 is 1.49. What this means, this is really cool. This is positive. So Nike's net sales are rising. They're going up approximately 1.49 billion every 1 year. Super cool. Okay, but they're not asking us for the slope. We found the slope, which is super cool because we needed to, but they want an equation. And so if we look at point slope form, what we needed 1 point and 1 slope. We do have a slope. We have 2 points. Here is the awesome part. You get to pick a point. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 4 and 12.25. If you pick 5 and 13.74, you're going to end up with the same result at the end because we're talking about the same line. Okay, so you have your slope, you pick 1 point, and you proceed. So y minus the y from the ordered pair I selected, 12.25, equals m. M is my slope that we calculated, 1.49. X minus the x value, that's a 4. Okay, now this is point slope form. We want to have an equation that we can make a prediction. So what I want to do is convert it to y equals mx plus b, which is called slope-intercept form. So step 1, I need to distribute my slope. So it's y minus 12.25 equals 1.49 times x minus, take 1.49 times 4, and you will get 5.96. Last step. Notice in slope-intercept form, y is isolated. I need y by itself. So I need to add my 12.25 to the other side. And now what I have, I'm just going to grab a separate sheet of paper here. I have y equals 1.49x. If I have negative 5.96 and I add 12.25, I have a positive 6.29. Now here is an equation that I can use to make predictions. Here is the cool thing, you guys. Let's say that they want you to say, okay, in 2000, predict what the sales were for Nike. So 2000, X would be a 0. So if I put in a 0 here, in the year 2000, this would cancel. Nike's net sales were approximately 6.29 billion. If you want to know the sales in 2001, you put a 1 there. If you want to know the sales in 2002, you put a 2 there. What they want us to do is to use our equation to predict the net sales for 2006. So that means that X equals 6. So y, remember they told us that the net sales is what y is representing. So the net sales equals 1.49. X is a 6 representing 2006. Yes, you can go ahead and use your calculator. 1.49 times 6 plus 6.29. I get 15.23. So y equals 15.23. We have to remember to label this billion. And the cool thing is business owners do this all the time. They make predictions because now they know, well, in the year 2006, we can predict that this is what our net sales will be. So this will let them know how many employees can they afford. Can they afford to maybe build another warehouse? These numbers are really, really important if you are a business owner. So when in real life do you actually have to know this stuff? Hey, if you own Nike, you better know how to find the slope of a line so you can make some predictions. Okay, let's move on to the next idea. I hope you guys are having a great time today. We are almost done already. If you are sketching graphs of lines, you always want to make sure that you do have your equation in that slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. B represents your y-intercept. That's the location where your line is going to touch the y-axis. Now, m is your slope. So from your starting point, your y-intercept, your m, think of it as rise over run. And remember, if it's positive, you go up and to the right. If it's a negative slope, you go down and to the right. This is what we talked about right away at the beginning of class today. You can travel vertically up or down, but running, you can only go from left to right, meaning you have to travel in the right direction. You can only go this way. Okay, so one of the skills that they want to make sure you can do at this college level is just to rearrange equations. Can you take x plus y equals 2 and rewrite it in this format, y equals mx plus b? What that means is y needs to be by itself. Your term that contains an x comes first. Your constant, which means it's just a single number, goes at the end. Well, if I want y by itself here, I need to take x and move it to the other side. So y equals, x is positive here, so that means I'd have to minus it to the other side. My 2 was positive. Here is your y equals mx plus b format. So b, your starting point is a 2. So if I was graphing this, you would go up 2. Your slope is a negative 1, so you will go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. We would have a line that falls as you travel left to right. And that's what it means by describing. This line would fall. It would start at 2, you would go down 1 over 1. Because if I were to look at the slope as a fraction, remember you can always put a 1 underneath any whole number to create a fraction. Check this out. Y is already by itself. There is no x term. This is the same thing as y equals 0x plus 2. There's not an x term. So b, where does it start? This graph also starts up 2. M is the number that's connected to x. It's 0. Remember, if you have 0 as a slope, that means it's a horizontal line. It is not rising. It is not falling. It is just running in a horizontal direction. So if you have y equals a constant, what you have is a horizontal line. Now, here's one of my favorite parts. Parallel and perpendicular lines. The slope of a line is super convenient if you want to determine if two lines are parallel or two lines are perpendicular. Okay, this is how it works. Parallel lines, it says two distinct non-vertical. Remember, if you have a vertical line, that means that its slope is undefined. So we're looking at lines that are not vertical. They are parallel if and only if their slopes are equal. What that means is if you look at the two lines, if their slopes are exactly the same, those two lines are parallel. Two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if their slopes are negative reciprocals. Negative is the way that they're describing opposites. What that means is one slope is positive, one slope is negative. The other thing that they're looking at is a reciprocal. So if one slope is 1/2, the other slope has to be -2. Okay, so remember, reciprocal means that you take your fraction and you flip it. So the numerator becomes the denominator and vice versa. Okay, so this is what it means. You are taking the slope of one, it has to be the opposite sign and the reciprocal. What else do you know about parallel and perpendicular lines? Visually, from geometry, you should have talked about parallel lines. Parallel lines never touch one another because they are rising and running at the same rate, so they're not going to have that intersection point. Now, perpendicular lines, they cross or intersect. Where they cross and intersect, they form a 90-degree angle. That's the definition of that's the definition of perpendicular lines. They are two lines that cross or intersect. At that intersection, they form a 90-degree angle. Remember, that little square is what you can put to indicate 90 degrees. Parallel lines, they rise or fall at the same rate, which causes them to never intersect. So we have two examples to go ahead and look at this. It says, find the slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b of the line that passes through the point 2, -1 and is parallel to this line. Parallel means they have to have the same slope. So step one is we have to figure out what that slope would be. So I have 2x minus 3y equals 5. I need to convert that to y equals mx plus b because I need to know what the slope is. I want to get y by itself and see what the value is that comes before x. So if I want y by itself, I'm going to take 2x, move it to the other side. So negative 3y equals negative 2x plus 5. Now I want y by itself. Right now it's negative 3 times y, so I need to divide everything by negative 3. So y equals negative divided by a negative is a positive, 2/3 x. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. I'm going to keep this as 5/3. This equation is equivalent to 2x minus 3y equals 5. The reason why I want it in this format is because now I can really quickly look and say, okay, what is the slope? The slope is the value in front of x. It is 2/3. Okay, they're not asking for that. It says find the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line that passes through this point. So we know a point, and it's parallel, meaning it has the same slope as this line. So now I can do point slope form. Y minus the y from the point that we want on the line, negative 1, equals m. M is 2/3 because it has to have the same slope as this line. X minus the x from the ordered pair. Okay, and this is really y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 2. All I did from this step to this step is realize I had minus a negative. Minus a negative, you change it to a plus. Okay, that is point slope form. They want it in slope intercept form. So I need to distribute. Y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus. Now remember, when you multiply fractions, you take top times top, bottom times bottom. So this is 2 times 2, which is 4, over 3 times 1, which is 3. Last step, I need to isolate y, so I need to minus 1. Here's another rule with fractions. I cannot subtract fractions unless you have a common denominator. So I can change 1 into 3/3 because 3/3 still has a value of 1, but what I did now is I created my common denominator that carries on over into the answer. Remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, you are just adding and subtracting the numerator. So this is negative 4 minus 3 more. I end up with negative 7/3. There is the line, the equation of the line that would be parallel to this line, and this one would go through a point that is located 2 units to the right and 1 unit down from the origin. This is as hard as this will get because it's all the different ideas. It is point slope form. It is how do you find the slope. It is rearranging equations. It's slope intercept form. It is everything about the section in one. So if you understood all of this, give yourself an air high five. Be proud of yourself. No, I'm proud of you too. Let's look at one more just to make sure we've got it. Okay. Find the slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, of the equation of a line that passes through this point to negative 1, and this time we want it perpendicular to that line. Now notice these are the same equations, 2x minus 3y equals 5. So I already took this and turned it into slope intercept form in the previous example. We know it's y equals 2/3 x minus 5/3. These two equations represent the same line. This time I want a line that's perpendicular. So the slope of my line has to be the opposite and the reciprocal of the slope from this line. This slope is positive, so mine is negative. This slope is 2/3, so my slope is 3/2. That's the only information you need from this equation. You use this to find your m. Now I know my slope, I have a point. So now it's point slope form. Y minus a negative 1. Again, that's going to change to a plus. Equals negative 3/2 x minus the x from the ordered pair. They want this to be in slope intercept form. This is correct if they were asking for point slope form. Slope intercept is y equals mx plus b. So I need to go ahead and distribute. So y plus 1 equals negative 3/2 times x is negative 3/2 x. Again, when I'm multiplying fractions, I'm going to put a 1 under here because it's top times top, bottom times bottom. Negative 3 times negative 2, that's positive 6. Bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. Hey, 6 over 2, I can go ahead and write that as a whole number because 6 divided by 2 is 3. Last step, I want y by itself, so I'm going to minus 1 over. So y equals negative 3 halves x plus 2. And that is section 1.1. Now with the college classes, you have suggested assignments. These are questions that you can try if you feel like you need extra practice, okay? You do not hand these assignments in. Again, notice that I did just suggest odds. The reason for that is because the solutions are in the back of your textbook. You can go through, work on a few questions, make sure that you're fully understanding, check your answers with the back of the book. If you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I hope you had a great first day of college algebra. Talk to you soon.